Okay, let's see how this works. Feel free to throw a thumbs up in the chat or type something just to make sure that because I'm using my second monitor today, so um, feel free to throw a thumbs up. Everything looks okay. Are we here? Good. Yeah. Like you say, I am I am here physically. I am here physically, but we're gonna go with this, right? I did not want to move it to another day because I have next week my company is doing like a company retreat, like a revenue, like a kickoff thing for the year, and I'm going to Austin, Texas next week, and I literally and my birthday Saturday. Like I have zero time to kind of move things around, so I'm like, you know what? Show goes on. I don't care if I got 102-degree fever. Show goes on. We're getting on here. We're doing sequel. We're gonna have some fun. I'm wearing my Snuggly. It's big. It's got my company logo on it. Where's the camera? Over there. Yeah. So like last year, the last meeting of the year, our company had a meeting, and they're like, okay, for everyone here, you get to either get a Snuggly through Spring Health, or you get like a duffel bag. And now I'm like, give me the Snuggly, give me that thing. And it came in like I don't know 2 or 3 days ago, and it came in handy because your boy is not doing the best. But as us guys, we like to complain, even though if we're feeling a little bit bad, we like to complain. So I'm probably fine, but you know what? We're chilling today. So for those here, I really appreciate obviously being able to move this back a little bit to accommodate some bit of time. But of course, if you are not here, then this is recorded. Everything's all good. I've done an intro to SQL class. I think it was about a month and a half, 2 months ago. It's gonna be pretty much a similar format, except spending a little bit more time on the querying part and not so much on the PowerPoint. I think that was the one biggest thing I did last time that took a little time. Just make sure that if you are here, that in the description there is the data set. It's a Google Sheet. All you gotta do is go into it, go to File, and then download a copy as a CSV, and you have your own data set there. And then underneath that is SQL Editor that you can use whatever SQL server you want. But I know since this is an online class, we don't have time to go through a legit server, get things set up, make sure things are good. So I have in there like a browser SQL server. They could go in, plug it in, and you're good to go within like 10 seconds. So that stuff's all there with the SQL Editor and the data set. And yeah, I mean, it's all there. Like I said, as I go through this presentation, which I'll just be walking through this, like I said, the whole point of this class are for people who really haven't spent much time in SQL. If you have spent months learning SQL and you feel like you're in more intermediate or expert level, this is definitely not for you. It is definitely for people who have never touched SQL yet or have just used a little bit and just kind of at least want to be in an environment where they could actually do some querying with other people, maybe get a little more comfortable, learn a couple things along the way. So without further ado, like I said, I have the chat open on this one screen, so in case anything comes in, I got the chat right here, got my presentation over here, and let's get right into it. So like I said, the whole point of this class is that it is the intro to SQL. If you don't know what SQL stands for Structured Query Language, which is a standard language for managing and manipulating databases. Is my computer, or is it quieter than normal? You know what, Emily? That can be a good point. I could check my microphone really quickly. My wife has taught me all these things about computer stuff. Go to my microphone. My computer wants to get there or not. Let's see. One second. If anyone else feels like it's too quiet, let me know too. But I'm going to... boy. Okay, so not that one. Open sound settings. Tap. Yeah, I think it's good over here. Yeah, my volume is set up all the way to like 91. So if it is too quiet, if anyone else feels it's too quiet, let me know, and I could like see if something else is up with that. But also maybe because I'm not talking out loud, because I legit feel rough. We chilling. We chilling today. Okay. So obviously with that, like I know SQL might, if you go online, you see what SQL is, right? You're querying, writing a bunch of code, but all you're really doing is, you're pulling data from a database. That, in conclusion, as an entry-level analyst, your main priority is pulling and querying that data, manipulating it, that are set in databases. All SQL's doing, all your code is doing, is figuring out how to get that information to you in the way you want. At the end of the day, that's really, in a nutshell, what you are mainly doing as an entry-level analyst. Further down the line in your career, you want to become a database admin or whatnot, totally different. But as an entry-level analyst, your main priority is to manipulate and pull from these databases. And of course, it's widely used in more than just data analytics. You'll see a lot in software development, data engineering, and a lot of roles, especially within software development. I know that for me, when I was learning in my journey, whether I want to get into analytics or more software development, SQL is very common in everything. And like I said before, the key purpose is to retrieve, insert, update, and delete data within a database. Now, yes, that's all true with the last part, retrieving, insert, updating, and deleting. But those last three, you probably won't do a lot. Because think about it, these databases host millions, billions of rows of data within just a table. There's tons of tables within a database. So you got to think, they're probably not going to let someone come in who has 0 years experience handling databases and ask them to delete information or insert information. That's where, especially if you work at a larger company, you'll have teams that do that, like a data engineering team or people like that will be in charge of that. So really the main key purpose of this, at least for most likely the people in this situation, is the retrieving part. You will not have to insert anything. You'll never delete anything, because if you delete the wrong thing or you insert the wrong thing, you're done. You're fired. So they're not going to give that, like I said, a permission to a lot of entry-level people. So all I really want to focus on is the retrieving aspect of it. Okay. And so why learn it? It might sound straightforward, because I'm a huge advocate for SQL. I really think it is the most important tool to learn, whether you want to get to data analytics or you're just even curious. This is coming from someone who SQL is not my main tool in my jobs. It's always been Excel or Google Sheets. SQL has always been second for me. But I still feel understanding SQL will put you way beyond others who might just only be good at a tool like Excel. So while I learn it, you're able to access and manage data efficiently. I think the ability to, like I said, you actually go into these systems and pull information out is a skill. It's a lot. You'll be surprised how many people, even senior analysts, I'm a senior analyst, but there's a lot of senior analysts I know who have never even worked with SQL. But you might think, oh, how are they senior analysts? Well, it's just based on their role in the organization. For you, though, if you want to come in and actually prove that you are better than the typical analyst, being able to understand data, doing with your join, how do we join data with SQL? How do we manipulate? So being able to do it efficiently can really separate you amongst others. It's also essential for data-driven decision-making because, like I said, all this data is housed all over the place. So at the end of the day, your stakeholders know what they want to do. They know the decisions that have to get made. However, they need that data. And these are kind of I worked for a very large organization, Cigna, which was like number 20 on the Fortune 500. They're just these databases are insane. Like, you get lost in them. So be able to actually retrieve that information is essential for people to actually make these decision making, which then looks good on you because you allowed your stakeholders to make these decisions that could, potentially be millions of dollars worth of value. And then, works across various relational database systems. Like I said, there's many different kinds of SQL servers. So that's why we don't really focus too much on, like, okay, we're going to do all our stuff in MySQL. We're going to do all in SQL Server, because every job I've had has had a different server. My first job was SQL Server. Second one was MySQL. And my current one is BigQuery. All completely different. So at the end of the day, though, your ability to manage data, retrieve it, all that can work under any kind of server. And like I said, we're not really admins. We don't need to be masters of databases. We just got to be able to retrieve information. So like I said, just learning SQL in general can be applied to any system really out there. And some of the key concepts, since this is a intro class, like I said, these are the three main things to really understand about just how SQL could work and how it's efficient. So the first one up is tables, and that's why, like, for me, my preference to learning data analytics is you start in spreadsheets and then you go to SQL. And you might think, okay, why? Obviously, I might think, oh, I'm good enough with Excel. I'm good enough with this. 50% of the time, people aren't. There's a lot to Excel. There's a lot to that. And what's good about starting in something like Excel is you understand structured data. And with the first one being a table, being able to take a structured format to store data with rows and columns. It's like a spreadsheet. So that's why I think, if you spend time within a spreadsheet tool like Excel, you can learn proper ways how to construct tables and data so things be connected, refreshed, and whatnot. Second one up is queries, which are commands used to interact with the database. And like I said, queries is like, okay, we have to type a certain language to get this information out. And that's where you get the different commands like select, from, where, group by, all these different concepts. And I think the biggest thing about is it's pretty close to like being like almost like you're reading like it's regular, like a regular language. But think of queries also like a formula within Excel. If you want to do a sum ifs or X lookup, like it is a query in a way, right? You are writing some kind of code to retrieve something for yourself. So in this sense, different queries, which we'll go over in a little bit, are different ones to interact with the database to get the information that you want. Last but not least, primary key, which is a unique identifier for a row in a table. This is very similar, like this, I'm going to go back to almost Excel in a way. If you use Excel and you want to do an XLOOKUP or VLOOKUP or index match, right? You need the two to connect somehow, right? If you want to connect two tables, use a lookup function, you need something similar, like an ID, order ID, company ID, or maybe it's something based on a certain code that comes in from a product. So having something like primary key is important because if we want to connect data to other sources, we need a primary key. And that is something that's more unique. So it's something like I said, an order ID. If you have a list of orders that come in, and each one has a different name, different city, different object, but each one has their own unique ID, that's something that can get connected to any data source out there. So understanding those three being tables, queries, and primary keys are really the understandings on how to have structured data and actually have a successful time, understanding the more basic or intermediate parts of SQL. And then when it comes to the syntax, these are some of the three main ones that really can, in a way, get a lot done. With select, which, I personally think these are straightforward in a way, where the select function literally retrieves specific data from a table, right? So literally when you write out your queries, which we'll do in a little bit, you will use select to say what you want to pull from the table, mainly being the column headers. From is the table to query from, because like I said, in databases, there's a database that has tables, that has data. So being able to use from is, we'll just specify what's the name of the table we're pulling from. And then where's where it comes in very unique. And I think if you're good with Excel, if you're good with like the if function within Excel, where becomes pretty much a piece of cake. Where does all the filtering, results based on conditions, where you'd be like, where the date is between October and November, where sales is above 10,000. That's where you put in a ton of filters within there. These are the three main ones that you'll be using pretty much all the time, because select and from, pretty straightforward. What do we want? Where's it from? Okay, so we have that now, right? But the where function comes in like, okay, within this whole data, we only want this. We only want that. So all you're really doing is taking this huge database, this huge data set, and making it this big, and then that big. It's just you're taking your steps one by one to get it to the information that you want. That's all you're really doing, is taking a large data set and slowly breaking it down to exactly the criteria that you want. Those are some of the more basic ones. And here's an example of something you might think. And I kind of want to put this in a kind of like a situation where we are kind of thinking of a more realistic one. So the question is, retrieve all employees with a salary greater than $50,000. And it's answered down here, which you'll see where it says select, and you'll see that the little star right here. The star symbol means you're selecting every single column. Now, I'll show in a little bit why it's most of the time not good to do that, because you don't need all that information. But if you really do need all of it, you use a star symbol that selects every single column. So in this situation, it's select from. We're going to say employees is the table name, where salary is more than $50,000. So that's just a little example on like how using select from and where all comes into play, and just shows that, if you were to read off that bottom, if you just to read it as you see it, it just makes sense. It kind of almost looks exactly as the top, but it's just written out in a SQL language. And then some additional features is grouping data, which is using group by, and having. Having does the same exact thing as where, but having, all it does is that having does filtering based off the group data, where does filtering based off the original table. Aggregate functions such as count, sum, average, min, and max, just like you would see within something like Excel. And then other filtering functions, you can use things like and, or, between, and like. Very similar to Excel. If you want to do things like the if function within Excel, you're using and, or you use or, all that kind of stuff. So like I said, this filtering stuff, you got to think like logically. I think at the end of the day, with everything that you see within SQL, think logically. Think about what would just make sense. And then from there, that's where the code will kind of come to you and you'll write it out. And plus too, when you are on the job, you'll have ChatGPT or whatnot in your back pocket. Like, every single time I write stuff, I know what I want to write, but sometimes I'm like, you know what, ChatGPT, I want this. I don't feel like sitting down for 30 minutes writing out a code when I could write it for 2 minutes, give it a shot, and then see what has to get changed, and I'm done within 5 minutes. So you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to know everything like the back of your hand. However, also, I don't know why I'm wearing headphones. I don't know why I'm wearing headphones right now. I have no music coming in. I don't know why I was doing that. As I'm telling you, it's a fever. The fever, man. Let's get into me. But yeah, like I said, now I got a little distracted. I'm sorry. But yeah, when it comes to writing out these queries, you do not have to be an expert at knowing every single thing by hand. I know when it comes to interviews, like, yes, we got to try to do the best we can. But at the end of the day, all we're really focused on is the logics behind this. Like, why are we writing this? What will this do? What could this do? And the more you think about it in logical terms, the more things will make sense. And like I said, mainly, practice makes perfect, where with SQL, I mean, you could practice everywhere. You could practice this all over the place. There's things like LeetCode, Data Lemur, a bunch of different websites you could practice for free. I do not think you have to pay to practice SQL. There's a ton of platforms you can do this on. If you're going to pay it for anywhere, hopefully there's other benefits involved with it, but I do not think you need to pay $30-$40 a month to do SQL interview questions. Because if you are, you're already doing too much. You don't need to spend all day doing SQL interview questions, because all you're going to do is you're going to turn yourself into a borderline computer. So make sure to utilize free tools like SQLite and other online platforms to experiment with them. Work with real-world data sets. I think that's a thing where they don't have to be completely real. What I mean by real-world data sets is when you get a data set that's very realistic. It doesn't have to be actually real data. But like, for example, data set we're going to work with in a little bit is very realistic. So everything within there would make sense within a database, except it's not actually a real data set. It's just made up data set, like a mock data set, but it's realistic. So I think every single time you work with data sets, try to do things that are a little bit challenging. Don't do things that are very, simple, 100 rows done here. Try to make it as realistic as possible so it can really get you thinking of more of the business aspect and critical thinking part of SQL. And solve SQL challenges to improve skills. I kind of mixed that up where I said, the last one was supposed to be more like, utilize things like Data Lemur and stuff like that. What I meant with the top one is experiment with free tools like SQLite. It's kind of what we're doing in a second, where there's many different platforms to use SQL. Like, to download any SQL server, you don't have to pay for anything. So make sure to take your time, see what platform makes you feel most comfortable, and practice it that way. Yeah. That's what I got with that, I kind of want to get some problems here. So we got here, I need help with null values. Like, one's okay, remove missing and null values. Now, like I said, that's a very, that completely depends on the situation, right? So at least I'll say, in my sense, I'll not even say as much about null values. I'll just say anything about like improper data in general. What would happen most of the time is that you would look at it and say, okay, like here's an example. And I think this is why it completely depends. I had a data set with about 50,000 rows in it. And about 9 rows of it was data that it wasn't null, but it was bringing back like the dates were off. Like there's a bunch of miscalculations going on, and basically those 9 rows were messing up our calculations. So I was like, okay, naturally I wanted you to get rid of it. But then we sat down like, okay, there's stuff in here that we do not want you to get rid of it. Let's figure out a way to see if there's a way we could change that within the system. And then we proceeded to try, and then we didn't, so we actually ended up just getting rid of it. But I think like with null values, I mean, that's just one little example. It can mean a lot of things. It just will depend on what you're trying to accomplish. Is it a project? Is it an actual work? How much of a difference does it make? Like, it's a whole concept of like, what will it do? Is it supposed to make your work easier, or are you actually just doing it to do it? Right? Like, you gotta just have more. That's a tough question. I can't, unfortunately, answer that one for you. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to do. Let's see here. Like the normal set, yeah. Like I still can't help. Like no matter what, I can't really give an answer to that because the answer can depend on a million different things. If you're doing just a project to do a project, then just get rid of it because it doesn't matter. But if you're on a real job, it's not so simple about just getting rid of it. If you're just doing a project, then just do whatever you want to make it easier for you to do the project. But that's really it. I'm gonna switch a couple screens here, so I'm gonna throw up the be right back thing, but I'll be back like 20 seconds as I move this around because I don't want anything that pulled up that shouldn't be. So 1 second. Okay, cool. Now let me switch over this. So make sure, to get the data set in the description, get a hold of the SQL editor as well, because when we get into it, I'll explain how to get it set up, but just make sure you guys are one step ahead of me so we don't spend too much time doing that. Okay, here we go. Cool, all good. So what I had in the description, I want to make sure, can everyone see my screen okay? Let me know how it looks. Does it look bad? Does it look okay? Let me know what you think before I... Yes, sir. Okay, cool. We got it. Yes, sir. I zoomed in as much as I could. I mean, I could zoom in a little bit more, but we'll see how it goes. So like I said, I have this already set up, but what I will say is when you want to bring this into this system, I'll try and make this as simple as possible. So when you went to the Intro to SQL dataset and you, as I said, you downloaded it as a CSV, when you go to New Table right here to the left, it'll ask you to add a new table. All you gotta do is go to Local File. I'm not gonna open this up. I have no idea what's gonna open up, but you go to Choose File, click on the file you want, and then for the table name, I named it just Dataset. So when I'm typing this, it'll be dataset in there. So just make sure you understand that. And then once you tap add table, you'll have your table over here. Now you can't preview it, but you'll see over here to the left is you should see all these columns in here to the left. So before I start, if anyone has any questions, you could definitely feel free to, what was it? Where did it go? Where did my stuff all go? Get that. Cool. So if anyone has any questions, you can let me know before I start. Just getting a couple things ready. Cool. Okay. So first things first, what we could do here is, in order to at least view the table to know where we are working with here, is let's just do a select star from dataset. Right, because we're just doing select everything from datasets. We want to bring in every single column. Let's do the run query. and you'll get all of your. Now, like I said, because my camera's in the way and I'm very zoomed in, you might not see everything, so I apologize about that. Or actually, you know what? I'm gonna move my. Oh boy, not that. Let me move this over here, and you get to see my little. There. Let's see. Nope, don't like that. Yeah, whatever. That'll do for now. So that should be better now because now my camera will not be in the way. So like I said, with this, we just have our entire data set here, and we can take a look at it really quickly. Like I said, if you have taken the Intro to SQL course, this data set is extremely familiar. We have the ID column, and like I said too, when you're with this, I find this a little bit best as like the best like in browser SQL editor because it's very just straightforward and simple. You got things like the ID, customer name, the sentiment. Like I said, this data set is based off a call center, so the sentiment is basically how did the call go? Was it neutral, very positive, negative? CSAT score, which is score of 1 to 10 on how the customer gave a score. Now you'll see that some of these are blank. Why do you think some of these could be blank? If you just look at this really quickly and understand that this is a call center, why do you think the CSAT score, the customer satisfaction score, why do you think some of these rows are empty? Yep, Walter. Yep, perfect. Yep, they didn't take it right because the other thing. So how many times do you ever call, and how many times do you call and they say, "Oh, if you stick around for a 2-minute survey at the end of the call, you'll blah blah." I never do it. I never stick around for that. So it's just like that. Some people just don't take it. Some people don't do the call, right? So that's all it means. If there's a score there, they took the time, gave the survey at the end. If not, it's blank. So that can come in handy in some situations. Call timestamp. It might look a little messed up a little bit, but that's just how the data we're working with. So it has the date in front and the time at the end. Reason why they called, the city, state, channel is how the call is what answered, right? What did it go right to the call center? Did the chat bot answer it? Was it through email? Was it through the website? All that stuff. Response time. SLA just means basically, without getting too in depth with this aspect, as someone who came from previous role, I was involved a lot in contracts and pricing. SLA is basically service level agreement. So basically, if it's within SLA, that is like, okay, that's within the range that we expect the person to answer the call. If it's above SLA, which is bad, which means you took longer to answer the call than what was agreed upon. Below SLA, which is good, means you answered it quicker than what we expect you to do. So just think about that, because if we get something that says above SLA, but it had a low score, then that makes sense. They took a while to answer, person wasn't happy, all that stuff. Call duration in minutes, it's just how long the call was in minutes, and then the call center is who answered it. Like I said, we're working with just one table with this, because we're trying to just understand a more key concept of SQL. So what I'm going to do here is let me bring in the first question. Let's see. Let me see if I can do this. So we can see all at the same time. Okay. So you'll see why I did these like 2 hyphens and whatnot. So basically, I just made a comment. So we could do within SQL. This is really good that if you want to like write notes down as you go along, as long as you comment it out. So with the 2 hyphens right there, if you were to run the query, it would not pull it, right? Because it's just text. You might think like, okay, if I did this and that's there, it might not work. Well, no, it's fine. As long as you comment it out, it's all good to go. This comes in handy, especially when you work with other teams and you want to share queries with people, or you want someone to update something for you. You might want to write a comment in saying, okay, update this every Friday at 5, or update this with this date every 2 weeks. So having things like comments in here are good for queries that get a little more complex, and you just want to remember things if you're not the only one that's working on it. So go down here. So what this question is, we have to write a query that retrieves the customer name, city, and state of all customers who had a billing question as the reason for their call. So, if we remember from what I went over before, right? We have to retrieve the customer name, city, and state. So, how do I start this off? First of all, we know right away what we got to get, right? We know what we need to retrieve. How do I start that off? I know what I have to get. It says I need to get customer name, city, and state. How do I start that off? Yep, exactly, yes. And that's good that you wrote it in that order, right? Good, yes, because you wrote that right, customer name, city, and state. We do want to try to always stay in order with how the request comes in. If they say things like we want the customer name, city, and state, we want to give it to them in that order. We do not want to mix, go city first, customer name, then state. We want to put it in the exact order of the question order request we get. So, yep, we're going to do it with select. And you might think, too, I like to put all my commands in capital letters. You don't have to. Like, you could go here and do, lowercase select, and it does the same thing. But I find if I put it in all caps, I can easily separate it. So anything that's in caps clearly is a command. Anything that is in, non-caps or just regular text that's basically not blue or purple, whatever color this looks like, that just means it's a regular part of the query. So I always like to capitalize so I know I can separate it. So we have to do customer name, right? We want to write it exactly as the columns are, customer name, and then we're going to do city and then state. And another thing I like to do too is, how you want to write your queries. We could write just one long line going all the way across and we're good, right? But if we want to make sure we write things that are easily understandable for us, but also other people come in and look at your work, we want to be able to structure it correctly. One common thing you'll see is the commas. You can see in this situation, I have the comma after each column. We also could do things like the comma. Let me write it in this way. You could also write it like this, where you put like the comma in front like that. So if you want to go more up and down, it doesn't really matter whatsoever. It doesn't matter how you do it. I personally just like to write it like this. Write the column, comma, and so on. It doesn't really matter how, but whatever works best for you, whatever makes you feel the most organized and not be able to understand it, I just say that's fine. So okay, we have the columns we need, and we are pulling it from our table, which is data set. If you called something different, just write something different. So we have this information. So if I were to only do this, let's see how I've never actually used this one before. Okay. I'll have to get rid of this. There we go. So make sure with some SQL servers, you could highlight the certain query and it'll run that, but in this one you can only have one query on at a time. So when I ran this right here, pull this up a little more. I have all of the customer names and their city and state. Am I good now? Am I all good with the question? Right? So I pulled in the name, city, and state. I got that all good. Am I good? Am I good to move on to the next question? No, sir. Why not? I mean, look, I got the name, city, and state. Like, why? Yeah. Now, don't be giving the answers away. Don't be putting the answers out there for people. I know I'm trying to build some suspense here. So I'm kidding. But yeah, so we have all their names, cities, and states, but we got to look for the ones who had a billing question, right? So we got to think, okay, we have to filter. We basically have to do a filtering here, right? So we use the where function and think, if we look back before, the reason column is the one that's going to tell us what's happening. And within quotes, we're going to do, single quotes, billing question. And there we go. So now what this is doing is it's now only showing the customers and the city and state who called for a billing question. That could come in, that could be very important because of what if they're asking, oh, we want all the customers for this and that, and you give them every single customer. It's like, okay, cool, like appreciate that, but that's not what we want. We want the ones that only have a billing question. And also, if you want to double check your work to ensure that you're right, you could type in reason as the next column, and you can see that every single one in here is billing question. So yeah, that's all. I like to do that too. If you're doing, some filtering here with the where and you want to double check your work, I like to throw in at the end just to ensure that everything's right. And yeah, everything is right there. I could name my query. Let's go. Okay. I'm just call this one question 1. Don't mind if I do. I like this website. I like it. Cool. So that's question 1. Any questions on that one before I move on to the next one? No. Cool. Okay. Call this one question 2. Cool. I'm always going to start off with this so we could always take a look at our data as we talk through it. I'll run that right there. Keep it right there. Cool. Okay, I'm pulling the next question. Okay, I'm bringing this over a little bit. Okay. So next question we got is we have to retrieve the top 2 customers with the longest call duration. Display the customer name, call duration in minutes, and the call center that they called to. Okay, so this one's a little bit different. A little bit. Let's kind of think from the top, though. I'm going to leave this right here. I'm not going to do any queries in the middle. I'm going to leave this open the entire time so we can view it together, the table. So let's kind of think this one, right, is a little bit different. So we have to retrieve the top 2 customers with the longest call duration. We want to display the name, call duration minutes, and call center. So what should be the first thing we are thinking when you get a question like this? What is the first thing we're thinking? Because it's not in the same order as this question, where this one kind of went in a certain order. This one's a little bit different. So what should be the first thing we are thinking about when you see a question like this? What are we trying to do for our first step? Think about what you do first. Yes, exactly, right? We want to think at the end of all of this, what is it going to look like? We don't know. We don't care about the answers. Also, if you knew what the answer was, this wouldn't be a question, right? We just got to know at the end, what do we want to show? And we see the final part, display the name, call duration in minutes, and call center. Okay, so we get that, right? First column will be customer name, and then call duration minutes, and call center. But like I said, when we do this, how many results are we expecting? We know we want to show how many rows, how many results are we expecting when we run this query. We should know exactly what we're going to get into before we do any kind of work. We know what we need to show, but how many rows of data will come back at the end of our query? Yes, only 2 rows. Should only be, so if you do something and there's 10, 15, 20, something went wrong, right? There should only be 2 rows of data coming back with customer name, call duration minutes, and call center. So let's start off. We're going to do select, and let's make sure we get the columns we need, right? So we have customer name right there. And then next we have, call duration in minutes, which to type that exactly is right here. Call duration in minutes in the underscore. So call duration. I'm just click on this, save a little time. And then call center, which is right here. Cool, call center. Go back to the front. And we are pulling this from the dataset table. So I have this, right? I have the customer name, call duration minutes, and then call center from the dataset. So I have what I need to show off. Now, how am I going to only retrieve the top 2 with the longest call duration? I got to think about that part now. Is okay, I could pull this in, get what I want, but I only want to show the top 2. What could be the next step in order to get me to that spot? What do you think? I kind of want to see what you guys are thinking here. Like I said, because I want to think logically here. Let's not think about the code. Code comes second. Our logic comes first. How can we, thinking about just in general, if we look at this data and we know what we can do within SQL from just a manipulation standpoint, what can we do to only show, or actually even this, like let's even take a step back. Like, yes, we need to at the end of the day get the top 2. But how can I find out at least like which ones were the longest? Like, how can I show that off? I want to show like, an order of call duration. So what's the next step I could do to actually just show at least order by perfect? Yeah, exact order. Yep. I want to at least do that. At least let me see the from highest to lowest what calls we want, right? And that's exactly the right way we're thinking. So let's just at least show it, and we could go from there. So order by is where this comes in. Thinking logically, right? We have our data. What are you trying to order things by? You could do ascending or descending. In this situation, we want descending because we want to see the highest to lowest. And we're going to do call duration in minutes. Descending. I'm going to get rid of this because I want to run this so we can take a look at this really quickly. So, okay. So we have this, right? Now, I get with this data set that there's a bunch of 45s. I get that, right? I get it's not the most perfect number on the dot. However, looking at this, these 2 right here should be, first ones to show up. So we have all these people here because this is the entire list. I just want the top 2. How am I going to do that? How am I only going to have the top 2 people show up in this query? Limit, yeah, let's do it. Limit 2. Throw a colon at the end. And there you go. Right? That's it. That was it, right? You said like, okay, let's get our information we want. We got our 3 columns. We ordered it in the way we want, and let's just say, okay, how much do you want? We just want 2 people. Let's say they want 5. Type in 5. Now you get 5 people. And let's say you wanted to see the lowest, right? Ascending. Now you see the 2 lowest calls. Right? So just understanding how, descending and ascending, if you just actually leave it like this without anything, it's automatically ascending order. So if you do order by and you don't type in anything after the column you want to do, it's automatically ascending. So anytime you want to do descending, you have to do descending afterwards. You have to do that every single time. But within this, right, we get the top 2. We slice and dice all the way to this point, and now you can send this off to your manager and be like, yep, these are the top 2. Where if you were to do this in Excel, I mean, yeah, you could get this done, with some filtering, some formulas. But in SQL, if you just think logically, how can I get to this point? With a couple, if you were to write this out on your own, probably be done in just like 15, 20 seconds. Done. Send it off to your manager. Done with it, right? So that's how you use, within this one, order by and limit. Those are 2 ways how to use order by and limit. I use them a lot. Order by, limiting what I want, to just send off to my manager what I need instead of exporting 10,000 rows of data if I don't need to do that. Any questions on this one? Any questions at all before I move on to the next one? Cool. I will say SQL, if what will really make you good at SQL, especially if you're not on the job yet, it's very hard to know how good you are or how much you know. But SQL, like, there's so much out there that you could practice. There's so much that you'll never have to pay a dime to practice SQL. But the more you think about it, and I'll say it again, in a logical way, and just speak out these questions. Don't just think code. Think with your brain first. And then when your brain starts clicking, as for example, I asked a question about using order, right? Walter wrote it out just as a normal sentence. We can order by the call duration with the longest calls at top. That's just logical thinking. Just thinking, how can we do it? And okay, how do we write it? Order by call duration descending, right? So as long as you continue to think logically and think what could work, then the code comes second. And the code's actually, with ChatGPT and all the stuff out there, if you know what you're looking for, the code will never be an issue. It's what really separates people is the ability to think with their brain and think critically. So we open up the next one. Doing this is making me forget I have a fever, and I'm kind of liking it. So let's keep this going. Okay, let me pull in data set here. Get this good. Okay, let's bring this here. Yeah, there's the only problem because I'm so zoomed in. Like, unfortunately, there's like the only way for me to show this off. So I'm sorry, it looks a little weird. Okay, so this one's a little bit more. A little more to this one. So let's walk through this one together. So we have to write a query to find the channel. Now remember, let's look at the channel. The channel is the type of call that came in. Was it like a regular call through a chat bot, email, web? We had to find the channel that had the longest average call duration in minutes for calls made between October 1st of 2020 and October 31st of 2020. Display the channel and the average call duration ordered by the average duration in descending order. Got a little bit going on here. A little bit going on. But like I said, if we break this down, it's going to be not as bad as you think. It's really not going to be as bad as you think. As long as we break this down little by little, we'll know how to solve this and we'll get it done easy peasy. So just like with the last one, we're just going to jump right into it and think first things first. We need to know what we want to retrieve. Okay? So at the end of our query, at our end of all our results, what is going to be shown? What columns? Or it doesn't have to be the exact name, but just what is it going to look like? And you can write all at once if you think you just know one column or something here and there, you write out. Or if you don't know, just give a guess. Looking at this question, the end result, what should it look like? Because we got two columns. So you can see right here, so displayed channel, average call duration. Yes, two columns. So the first column will be each channel. Second one will be the average duration for each one. Yes, exactly. Yep. Good way of thinking. So we know we need that. Right? Oh, let's stop at the answers. Stop jumping ahead of the answers. You're going to get me fired here. Oh, I'm kidding. But yeah, so we got to show up the two columns. Okay? So I think first things first, we have to think, okay, we use our select. And then display channel, we got channel right there. Let me go back in here. Right? Now, this is where things change. So we look in here, right? We see things like the longest average call. We see the word average a lot. We got to start using data aggregations now. Okay? Now, as we see right here, giving away the code right away. I'm kidding. Thank you for that. Is we have to initiate some kind of aggregation on the call duration. Like I said, with this one, as it's pretty straightforward, we have to do the average of call duration. And how you want to do aggregate functions is you do it right in the select part. So we're going to type in average, and we're going to do call duration in minutes. And what's great about this is when you do it in aggregation, you could use an alias. So we can call this something. Because if you leave it as it is, the result is going to say average, parentheses, call duration. It's going to look nasty, right? So all we're going to do is we're going to write as. I'm going to just call this, I don't know, average length. I don't know. Average call. I don't know, whatever. Average call. Doesn't really matter. Whatever you want to call it, go for it. So now at the end of my results, I'll have a column called channel. I'll have a column called average call using this kind of one. You want to do average duration? You know what? Let's go for it. Let's go for it. Why not? Average duration. Let's go for it. So now the new column, when we're all done, will say average duration on top. You can write whatever you want. As long as you give an alias, that calculation will be called whatever you give it. Okay, so we got that. It's coming from the data set. Okay, so we got that down. But now we got to do some kind of filtering, right? Because we looked at the question. We need to see calls made between October 1st of 2020 and October 31st of 2020. Without giving it away, without giving the code away. How about that? Without giving the code away, how are we going to accomplish that? We want to find the calls between October 1st of 2020 and October 31st of 2020. How are we going to accomplish that? Think logically. Type your answers from a logical standpoint, not so much from a code standpoint. How are you going to accomplish that? I'll give you guys a little time if you want to answer it. Filter data only between those two dates. We need to filter the call stamp column in order to get calls between those two. Okay, so, yep. We use between function. Okay, that's what I was about to say. All three y'all just said the word between, right? So we'll be using, I'm not sure what the query does. So up here, this right here, all of this. So what we're doing right here is we're trying to do a calculation based off call duration minutes. Instead of leaving it just like this, because if we run our code at the end, it's going to leave us with a new column and it's going to be called this. It's going to look disgusting. It's going to not look good. You don't want to send this off to a manager with a column header called AVG, call duration in minutes. So basically just doing this is now saying that any time that we mention this, we could just write this now. The query will understand any time that it pulls up average duration, it means that. This helps a lot when writing queries, so they're a little cleaner, easier to understand, and then at the end, your column headers will be much cleaner. It's all about being clean. It's just clean, easy to understand, instead of having a ton of aggregations going around all over the place, bubbles everywhere, all this stuff, parentheses here and there. So having aliases where we can name these aggregations will help us from a clean standpoint. And also writing code that, in the future, when I do more intermediate stuff, you'll see we'll write code that's like 50 lines long. So using aliases will help that we could tell SQL, okay, when we do an average on call duration, just write average duration instead of writing this out every single time and it looking all disgusting. So back to that point, yes, we use the between part of the, and also like I said, when you do aggregate functions, more practice better. More practice better. You'll get the lingo of the syntax of the code. You'll understand that way more as you practice. So yeah, we're gonna use the where function, right? And it's all right there. It's come here from the call timestamp columns. This is where the date is. So we're call timestamp, and we gotta just think logically, right? It's right there between, right? So we gotta use the between function here. Between. What's a between? We're going to write our two dates here. We're going to put the year in first. And the last one. Okay. So we have our two dates right here where we said right here where the call timestamp is between October 1st of 2020 and October 31st of 2020. So we got that. Now we have all this information down right here. If we're thinking about this right now, we're thinking, okay, we have the call, average call duration, timestamp between these two dates. Makes sense. I feel like, we're at a good spot, right? However, when we're doing aggregate functions, you have to group all this aggregation onto something. Because right now, it's doing all this aggregations, but it's not a set to anything. So we got to think here, if we're trying to group this data together, we're trying to group, like I said, this aggregate function right here. Once again, what is this function being applied to? At the end of the day, what are we trying to display again? Right? Channel, right? We're trying to show off the channel. We want to apply this aggregation to channel. So we're going to use the group by to say, okay, we want to group all of these calculations based on channel. Okay? So we're at the group by, but of course we looked also at the question. The last part is we want to order the average call duration in descending order. This is where the alias can come in handy, because now when I do order by, I don't have to type out this long sentence. I gave it a name. So now I can just write average duration descending. That's the beauty of you using aliases, that you can now, instead of writing out these, why didn't we use having after group by? So, because why didn't we use having after group by? So having is only happens when we are implying on data that gets filtered after group by. Okay, in this sense, we don't have to use a having, right? We already did our filtering and stuff before the grouped, because we're trying to get down to information we need. We don't need to use having in this situation because we're not doing it based off group data. We did our filtering before because we do everything before so we can get to the grouped part. So in this situation, we don't have to do having. The next question I do, though, involves having, and you'll see why we use it in that situation. But right here, we were able to get to our data without having to do anything with grouped data. We want to do all the filtering before, then we grouped it, and then we're done. There's no need to do any having in this situation. You'll see the next question. You'll clearly see why we use having in the next one. But like I said, in this situation, no need for it. We're able to accomplish everything without having to grouping the information. So if I run this right here, we get our average duration for each of the channels. Now I get it. You see email, that's not a call. Think about email. Think about it as like, okay, how long did the person spend emailing back and forth to the person? Same thing with web and chatbot. How long did the people spend communicating back and forth, even though it wasn't over a phone call? Now, one last thing, though. If you look at this, this is an ugly looking number. Ugly. Absolutely hideous. If I want to round this to the closest decimal place, just one decimal spot, I can go over to average and do round. And then do how many decimal places? I want 1. Close that up. And now it's round to the nearest decimal spot. So that's how you use the round one. That's kind of where I think it's pretty logical. Where like if you see a calculation you did, you can round it to the nearest number. Just like how you could in Excel, right? If you want to click, the buttons to, go different decimal spots. Same thing here. And all you got to do is use the round function. You put around the calculation. And all you got to do is write how many decimal spots you want to go. So if you want to go 2, now you got 2 spots. If you want to go none, go with around this nearest whole number. You get that. So round function comes in handy if you want to round certain numbers off without having them run off and look all silly and whatnot. So this one was a little bit more involved than the others. I just want to see if there's any questions about the logical thinking behind it, the code. Is there any questions on this one before we move on to the next one? I want to see if anyone has any questions on it. Because this one was a little bit more stuff to it, right? We used group by for the first time. We used round. We did average. We did between. Like we did all these different stuff that we didn't do before. So I want to see if there's any questions on this one before I move on to the next one. Group of channels, what makes people give the average? Exactly. Yep. Perfect thinking. Yes. Because if we don't do that, let me see. Let's see what happens. Let me go here. Right? You can see right here. It gives you the error just like that, right? If you were just to run it just like this, the column channel must appear in the group by clause or be used in an aggregate function. It tells you right there, right? So that's where it's like, okay, like it has all these calculations going on, but it needs to be applied somewhere. It needs to be applied, right? Because channel is in the select one. Let's say if I just did this. Now, this is just, like I said, the rounded amount for the entire data set. Now it'll work like this because there's nothing else in the select column. If I type in channel, because it's in here, it'll tell you it has to be grouped because it is involved in what you're trying to pull. In order for this to work properly, whatever is involved in your select clause needs to be grouped upon. So if you don't want this grouped upon, and you just want to know what's the rounded number and whatnot, it has to be by itself. So if you see right here, and also it'll tell you a lot more. I believe this site might tell you a little bit of information about errors, but it tells you actually pretty straightforward right here that it needs to be grouped by channel because it is involved in the select clause right there. Very good question. Very good question to ask. Okay, move on to the next one here. This is the last one I got. That's what I got. Interesting. Yeah, like I said, especially with SQL, I believe it's all about repetition. The more you practice and you think about it and like, okay, like, does this make sense? Like, does what I'm doing make sense? Some stuff might not. But the more you practice and you just continue to keep taking step by steps to just understand what's going on, it'll click. Like, I really feel like with this stuff, this more intro to SQL, everything we're doing is single table querying, right? We're not joining data. We're not combining stuff here and there. We're just querying off a single table. I feel if you spend a week really focusing on this stuff, you'll be pretty good at it. If you spend 1 week doing it, in my opinion. But like I said, that's just my opinion. I think 1 solid week is enough to feel pretty good about single table querying. Let me get the table back up. Bring over our last question. Okay, let's see. This is good. Okay, perfect. Okay. Oh, let me stretch for a second. Oh, man. After this, I'm making some soup, and I'm chilling. I'm going to add some jobs to my job board as I eat my soup, and I'm going to bed. Okay. And also, like I said, for everyone who signed up for this class through my website, I'll be very honest. I'll send out the email tomorrow with the winner. Like I said, I'm literally gonna be going right to sleep after I'm done with this. So I will send it out tomorrow morning with more info about the winner. Like I said, I do giveaways every single live I do. So like I said, if you don't win this one, I don't have one next week because I'm going to Texas. But starting in February, I want to start doing live streams twice a week, 3 times a week. Depends and stuff like that. So Walter, I don't take care of myself. Walter, I don't. It's funny. For once, I'm like, you know what, Chris, just go sit down and eat some soup and just go to bed early. I go to sleep late. I go to sleep like 12 or 1 o'clock. Sometimes 1:30. I always wake up at 7, though. I always wake up, at the same time. But I never take care of myself. Never do. Okay, enough therapy session. This question is find the reasons for calls where the average call duration is greater than 20 minutes. Display the reason and the average call duration ordered by the average call duration in descending order. Okay, so just like the others, the best way to approach this is think, how do I start this off? I have to think, what do I want my query to look like at the very end? So, after reading this question, what will my query look like? What should my results look like at the very end when I'm all done? Okay, so it should be 2 columns. So it says at the end we have to display the reason and the average call duration. So it's very similar to the other question we just did. Very, very similar. So I'm going to start off right by doing the select. 2 columns again. Show the reason. Yep, exactly. Very similar to the last one. Very similar. So we're going to do the select reason. We'll do average again. Call duration in minutes. We'll call this also average duration. Keep it similar to the last one. This is also coming from the data set. So now in this situation, so before when I was asked, why don't you use having after group by before, this one's going to come in handy. So, okay, in all the other questions we did, we used the where clause, right? Because we used where to, you see up there, like we have to find reasons where the average call duration is greater than 20. So should I put that in as a where clause? Like, should I do like where average call duration in minutes is greater than 20? Should I write it like that? No, why not? If I've been doing that for the rest, right? If I've been doing it for the rest, right? We got to where, use my stuff there, use it here. Why don't I just write where average call duration is more than 20? Why don't I just do this? Like, why not? Why not just do this? Why not just do that? What's wrong with that? If I just write that, right, where the average call duration is more than 20, like why wouldn't that work? If that's what you're saying. It won't work. Okay, why won't it work though? I mean, doesn't make sense when you look at it. If you were to look at this, could that make sense for a person who doesn't really know SQL that well or is just learning? Could that make sense the way you look at that? Because you're saying like we want the reason, average call duration from the data set where the average call is more than 20. Like, doesn't that kind of look like it makes sense? Yeah, right. Like, it does make sense. But I was saying, it won't work. That's right. It won't work. Let me show you really quick. It does for you. Does for you. Do you see that? Do you see the error right here? Yeah, I love this one. I'm gonna use this one from now on. I love this. Tell you straight up what's happening. You see it right here? The where clause cannot contain aggregates. You cannot use it in there. So, think. We can't use it there. We cannot use the where clause. So as we said before, when I kind of went over a little quickly in the beginning, using the where clause and the having clause. The where clause is applied to the data before any grouped. And having does the same thing as where, but it occurs after grouped data. So if we can't use where, we're going to group this averaged duration based off the reason. Group by reason. Now we use having. Because within having, and in having we have to do the average call duration. Not to get too confusing, but you cannot use aliases in having. It can only be the actual aggregates that you're doing. So because now we could use having, right? Having clause allows you to do aggregates, and it happens after group data. That's the biggest thing. And like I said, actually, I really like this CSV fiddle because it kind of tells straight up what's happening, right? So like I said, anything that you're doing, any grouping, or no, sorry, any filtering involving an aggregate function must come after you group the data together. Try to remember it that way. Anything that involves an aggregate function must occur after you group the data, as we see right here. So we have that set that we want to find anything that's more. No, we just use the number 20 because that 20 in this situation means minutes. And we want to order by average call duration, descending order. We can use aliases in order by because the data has now been grouped. It has now been set. All we're doing now is ordering it. Let me show you this, for example. Let me show you this. Let me run this really quick. So this is where, oh my gosh, my voice went out for a second. So you can see right here, like the query works, right? Without the order by, it works, right? We get the billing question, service outage, payments, and it has it all set, all good to go. But we want to order it, right? The query is all fine. Now, though, we see average call duration is placed in there. That is why now we can use aliases because now all the calculations have been set. It has been good to go. we can now use our alias as average duration descending. It's also once again round that bad boy to maybe 1 decimal spot. And there you go. Now we get from highest to lowest, payment, service outage, and billing question, highest to lowest, and call duration. Thing having as a where clause. Yeah, that's really, it does the same exact thing. It's just, it's where it's placed. It's where it's placed in the order, right? Aggregate functions cannot happen with where, because the aggregate functions have not been applied yet. They have not been applied yet. The aggregate functions need to be applied on the group by. So because of that, all the filtering must occur after group by. So that's why it works that way. That's a very good way of thinking, because yeah, that's all having is. Think about it like in this way. If you were to take this information right here, right? Let me cut this for a second. If I were to take this right here, okay? Let me go here. Everything can still run fine, but like I said, having these actually, let me do this instead to see if this will work a little bit better. Okay, cool. Let me just set, because I realized that I think I messed up my numbers a little too much here. I didn't mean to write that. Mess with my data set. I'm sorry. I think I messed with my data set a little bit. But let's say in this situation, right? Let me cut this, and we see all these 3 come up, right? Let's say, we have all our stuff down, and we only want to then show, okay, we have all this, but we want to show anything above 25.1. You're just putting that filter there, okay? Like, we have our aggregations already done. You can see it. It all happened, right? This is the query as of right now. That it already happened. This is a column header. All the stuff's there. All we're doing now is doing a filter based off this result. And that's where the having comes in, filtering basically based off the result we have right here, and order by. That's all having is. That's very important, though, when you're starting out, is understanding the difference between where and having, because they do the same thing, but they just occur in different spots. And you got to understand why they occur in different spots. Having occurs after data's been grouped. Simple as that. So that's what I got for that. I mean, we went over, in my opinion, when it comes to introduction to SQL and understanding how SQL works. I like only focusing on a single table. We went over concepts like, select from and where, order by, limit, group by, rounding, and average. I mean, those are it. I mean, there's other things like if you do using or doing like those kind of filters, like those are there too. But this is it. Select from, where, order by, group by, having, aggregate functions. The next step after this is joins. You know what I mean? Like that, to me, if you could understand these concepts, then you move on, right? Practice, get some real data sets out there. I have some SQL assessments on my website too. You can practice. Go on other free websites like Data Lemur. Practice the easy ones, but just understand what each thing's doing. Like, write things out. Don't have to solve it as quickly as you can. Practice as much as possible. And the moment you start feeling you're understanding like what's happening, and that's why we went over each question on thinking like, okay, let's break this question up. Let's not just write code right away. Let's figure out what's the order we're trying to go in, and then go from there. So that's that. That's what I got for today. Yeah, of course, no problem. I'm going to drink some body armors and some soup and chill. I'll be chill. I'll be answering some LinkedIn comments and stuff like that for a bit. I'll be chilling. But like I said, let's see. So is a good test whether to use where having is seeing if the query pulls data correctly before you use either one. Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, as even like right here, right? Let me cut this out. Like you even running it right here, you'll see like it's working fine, right? And you'll just think like, I just think what's gonna happen more with understanding the where and the having is thinking, where is this filtering applying on? If this filtering is going to be applied on grouped data, which basically is essentially just aggregate functions. Think of it that way. if you're using an aggregate function, if you're going to do any filtering based off an aggregate function, then it's going to be a halving. If it's not, 99.9% of the time, you're using a where clause. So anytime you do filtering based off an aggregate function, it will always have to be applied in halving because aggregate functions have to get grouped. If it's anything else besides that, 99.9% of the time, you're using the where clause in that situation. Yeah, like I said, honestly, I won't be doing any live streams next week, but the week after that, I got some stuff planned for data cleaning, Excel, Power BI project. I want to do a mix of career development, some technical stuff, but also I'm trying to get some more people in to do some webinars too and stuff like that, so I don't have to keep. If I want to do like 3 days a week of stuff. Like I really want to make, live teaching a primary focus of Data Frenchie. So yeah, make sure to stay in line with that. But I'll stick around for a little bit if anyone has any SQL questions, data career questions, or any kind of questions. I'll hang out for a little bit more in case anyone has any questions. So I'll keep the chat open if you have any questions. I'm here to answer whatever you guys got. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Austin. I've been to a lot of states. I've been lucky enough to travel a lot when I was younger. I've never been to Texas yet. This is definitely, I'm really happy to check this one off my list. But it's gonna be good to get out of the cold. I've been here in Pennsylvania and it's been snow on the ground the last 3 weeks. So I'm looking forward to getting out to some warm weather. Minutes in AP. I'm really glad to be working, but how much should I worry about? Accounts pay. Okay, so if you're in accounts payable, yeah, like accounts payable. I think that with accounts payable, I mean, there's a lot that can even lead to. Like, you eventually could find your way into like a financial analyst too and stuff like that. Like, I'm going to say this right now. Data analytics is more than what you might see online. Like, for me, I work in sales operations. I don't really do hard codes. I don't really do a lot of Python stuff. I work with just a lot of Excel docs and stuff like that, But I get pretty good compensation for what I do. So it's like not everything has to be this glorious thing where you're working with 7-8 tools doing this and that. So I really feel it has to be a mix of, what are you good at? If you're in accounts payable, then you are probably spending a little bit of time in stuff like Excel. There is a demand for decent Excel people out there. So I think like if you have that experience, that can help a lot with some more sales operations roles or financial roles, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, if you have that's experience that you can communicate to people that your abilities to be in that kind of work can apply to a lot of different analytics roles. It is relevant though. It's good to have some at least close relevant experience. But at the end of the day, it comes out to what you want to do. If you want to be in jobs that are really requiring dashboarding or Python or stuff like that, then you go for that. But don't try to get obsessed with the tools. Make sure it's a good job that you are exposed to a lot, but you also feel like you're in a good position to just learn a lot. You want to focus on the learning part because the more you learn, the more you get to figure out what you want to do. And I know for me, in my first 3 years, I've been exposed to Tableau, Power BI, Python, SQL, Excel, Google Sheets, Looker. I've been exposed to so many different tools, and I've come to the realization I like spreadsheets. I feel like that is my bread and butter. I feel like I am the best at doing that more than anything else. But it took me 3 years to figure out what I really want to do. So I find that like you shouldn't worry about if it's not being related to data unless you want to get into data. Then you start thinking about what you really want to do. But if you're like what you're doing now, that's fine. Keep doing learning on the side. But just understand that you do have real relevant experience and you definitely can translate that somewhere. Yeah, no, I know it's so late. I think you said you're over in Greece for him. Oh my gosh, you gotta get some sleep. I feel bad. I feel bad. When I moved this, I was like, oh no, it doesn't be really late for her. Oh no, because I know you come in and say how late it is. So I'm sorry about that. And it's I can't do these any earlier. Like I know today was late because I had to go to the doctor, but um, like when I do my live streams, they're at 6:30. Like that's right after I get done with work. I can't do it any earlier during the week. So but I appreciate you coming by. Is SQL Microsoft SQL? Sorry. So you mean by Microsoft SQL like Microsoft SQL Server? If that's what you're thinking of, like the server platform they use. Like I said, if you're just trying to learn a database system or something like that, then yeah, Microsoft SQL Server is a good one because it's a lot of companies utilize Microsoft to what was it? I know that what was it? What was I gonna say? Um, yeah, Microsoft Server is good. I learned SQL based off Microsoft Server just because I have a PC computer. It was easy to download, easy to kind of get going. It doesn't really matter which one you pick as long as you pick one and you just do that because, like I said, the code we wrote here could be applied there too. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. Just choose one that's easy for you to understand and work with, and go from there. Doesn't really matter which one. Oh, so actually, I don't typically start at 7:30. I typically start at 6:30. I'm in Pennsylvania, so I typically do 6:30. So it was only an hour late today because I had to come home, and I literally was like, I pulled a Michael Jordan flu game here. I'm not that bad, but like I basically sat down and I needed a little extra time to get onto my computer. That's all. But typically, and if you go to my in the description on my website, you'll see it's on YouTube as well. But on my website there is all the upcoming sessions I have and stuff like that, and you'll see they're all at 6:30. I want to do more on weekends, but I think during the week makes it a lot easier for me. So what do we use today? Because we're doing an online class, I did not want to sit down and do a full server upload. It would take 15-20 minutes for everyone to do it. It wouldn't work out. So using this CSV Fiddle, it's a browser editor, call it that. I call them an editor. It's not a database. But basically, you're able to come in here, upload stuff, and just get querying right away. There's no back end work you have to do. When you use something like SQL Server, you are literally downloading a database management system to your computer. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to look confusing on getting set up. So you're going to watch some videos, understand to get set up. However, what you do in SQL Server is realistic. It's an actual server, what you're using. If you just want to practice and pull in data and work with, it took me like 10 seconds to do this. Then use something like this to kind of get it in quick and just get typing. But if you want to practice in an actual database management system, you'll have to download something like SQL Server, watch some videos, get set up, and then you're on your way to using that. So this just comes down to your preference and what you really want to use your time on and focus on, stuff like that. Whew. Yeah. Like I said, I like doing 6:30 because you have time to take a little break after work and then get into this where I need a little bit of time to kind of, because like my 9 to 5 job, I love it a lot. It's just I work. I put my heads down the entire day, so I need a little time to separate before I get into stuff. But yeah. Just want to see if anyone else had any other questions, comments. Also, is there any other like kind of content you'd like to see? Because like I said, I have no problem doing these live streams. I love doing them, but open to more suggestions of type of stuff. Different types of stuff, different types of stuff like that. So I'm open to stuff. So either any questions or suggestions, I'm here to chat for a little bit longer. What's this bridge pioneer name? So by my name, so data French. So okay, so I was trying to think of like a name for my like what I want to call myself. My original name was Jersey Data Guy because I'm from New Jersey, but there's someone else called Seattle Data Guy, and I felt like that, and he's very popular, and I felt that that's legit copying. So I'm like, okay, I can't do that. So my last name is French. That is my last name, the word French. And my people called me Frenchie. They still call me Frenchie. My job, they call me Frenchie. So I'm okay. I'm called Data Frenchie. I don't know. I felt like it kind of rolled off the tongue. I don't know. So I just came up with Data Frenchie. I felt it was easy to say, flowed fine, didn't overthink it, and I like the name Frenchie. It's my nickname, so I kind of like it. I mentioned bringing on so Walter, good question. So here's my perspective with this. If I were to bring in people who were, so this is my focus on this. If I bring in big names, that usually requires a significant compensation, which I don't. I don't want to spend a lot of money on bringing in guest appearances, right? I don't want to that to happen. That will not be sustained. However, it's not about the big names I want. I want solid people to instruct. Like, I don't care if the person has a following. If they have experience and they want to teach, I'll give them the chance to do it. And in that sense, it's more I'm giving people a platform who usually don't, if I really promote something, I could typically get in here 50, 60 people watching something, right? So it could give someone who has great expertise, who maybe doesn't have the following to get that much. So they're not going to be as not that it's just how it is. Like, they're not going to be as demanding, but I'll give them everything they need. A platform. I'll be in the chat. I'll get the chat going. I'll get the people signing up, and I'll promote. Maybe they're promoting something. I'll promote it. Like, I'm gonna help them get exposure for helping me do a webinar. So it's kind of like that's typically how things work more. If you'll notice them, like, I know a lot of people who work at big companies like Google and Amazon who don't have followings, but I know that they would love to do stuff. And I think giving them a chance to do that is what I'm looking for. So I think I'm going to take a week or two and kind of sit back and think, like, okay, like, who could I reach out to that is trying to get a following, but just it's not working out as quickly as they hoped, and maybe I could try to help them and stuff like that. And hopefully that can lead into them maybe doing more, and then being a part of Data Frenchie and just doing set stuff, and then, go from there. But anyone who is more recognizable, like in the future, just being transparent with Data Frenchie, like, obviously the whole point is doing these classes. Somewhere down the line, if I do anything that involves like a mini boot camp or anything like that, then I'll be bringing in some bigger names in that sense. But that's, until that day comes. Jersey, yeah, I lived in New Jersey my entire life until last year because New Jersey costs $1 million to live in. So I had to get out. I love New Jersey, but I really do like where I live in Pennsylvania. I like it a lot. So I have zero complaints. Good enough to get on Data Frenchie. Yeah, like I said, I have no idea what it's going to look like. I know that I'm going to keep YouTube going as long as I can with these live classes, but I do know that, within a year or so, I would love to make a set platform that's all for, what was it? I want to make like a set platform where people could sign up, like, get a membership, sign up and you get as many classes you want and stuff like that. But for right now, I'm doing YouTube. I'm using YouTube as a way to kind of experiment too. See what people like. The SQL class, I got this one done in an hour and 10 minutes, where last time I did it, it took an hour and 40. So I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get my rhythm down with certain stuff. Like, some classes like this intro one will be done every 2 to 3 months. So it'll be the same concepts, but, getting a new audience. But I'm going to try just stuff out. Using YouTube to just try stuff out. And, I'm also trying to expand out of LinkedIn. LinkedIn's my bread and butter, but I get annoyed with LinkedIn very often. So the more I could expand myself outside of LinkedIn, whether that be YouTube, I have my Substack going. I'm sending my first newsletter tomorrow. Like, just trying to expand more. So I take some more pressure off. Not that I'm going to rant right now, but LinkedIn, like, it's a little hard. It's a little bit much. So I like to get out on other platforms where I don't have as many people following me so I could try stuff out. I like to kind of get back to a spot where I could just experiment, see what I like to do, what I don't like to do, and also hear from people too. So, yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. And like I said, I love, I mean, I was a teacher for a little bit, so I like teaching. But like I said, I'm just using this to keep getting better at teaching others, especially using, the computers, because I'm not that good with tech stuff. But yeah, no, I appreciate it a ton. I like it a ton. Yeah, LinkedIn's hard. It's definitely, it's been changing a bit. LinkedIn's been changing a bit with how when I started in 2022, it was really easy. I will say it was easy to kind of create content. It was just, people were eating up anything. Like the algorithm was going nuts with anything. And I'll say like the beginning of 2024 is definitely when me and a lot of other creators I know, like, don't know what happened, but just like it definitely hit a wall. And it typically happens a lot with I'm sure, like, if I talk about data every single day, I get a little bored of it. I don't want to talk about data every day, but I have, like, it's the brand I have. So, I just think that people naturally, they, pick up the following as much because you find someone else who's more interesting. And I think, for me, like, I've been out of the field for 3 years. I mean, I've been in the field for 3 years. Like, I can't keep talking about the same stuff I did 3 years ago. I have to adapt and stuff like that. So, yeah, LinkedIn is what you make of it. Just, if you utilize it for the right things with networking, at the end, it'll still be useful. Stuff like that. Long Islander, born, raised here, just expensive. Spoiling. Yeah, Long Island, yeah, you get your taxes out there. Property taxes are insane. I was out there in Long Island. My wife's cousin got married in, oh my God, what's the town? It's near, it begins with a P. Patch something. Brookhaven. I forget where it is. Bellport. I forgot what. Yeah, whatever that one is. Yep, whatever that. Yep. It was a town to the east of it. One town over to the east. I forgot the name of it was, but it was right over there. It wasn't bad, but my God, the traffic, the driving. I can't do it. I can't do it. Yeah. It's nice. I mean, Long Island's nice. It gives me, some parts of it gives me, like, I grew up near the shore in New Jersey. It gives me a little bit of shore vibes, but Long Island's a whole different beast because there's one way in, one way out. Unless take the ferry over to Connecticut or something like that. But one way in, one way out. Not a fan of that. Not a fan. Not a fan at all. But okay, I'm going to wrap this up because I'm gonna get some soup and go to bed. But I do appreciate everybody stopping by for the SQL lesson. Like I said, this will be recorded. Make sure reach out to me if you have any questions or anything like that, and I'll send out the winner. Email the winner tomorrow. I'll send out the email tomorrow about the giveaway for the SQL interview prep. But I appreciate you guys coming by. Everyone have a great rest of the night, and I'll see you soon. See ya.